Thanks so much for joining another exciting episode of Energized Thinking. We are thrilled to have our amazing guest with us today, Debra Klein. And you guys, Debbie is amazing. I want to introduce you to her. She is an innovative educational leader and expert in building high performing professional learning communities. She is deeply passionate about integrating play and gamified learning into daily instruction to foster social emotional learning, problem solving, and critical math and literacy skills. A seasoned mentor and coach, her expertise is widely recognized, with career highlights including contributions to educational books like Caring School Leadership and various teacher resource books for mathematics instruction. She is an annual guest lecturer at Wheaton College and a cited contributor to the U.S. Department of Education's Supporting Effective Educator Development research program. Her notable accolades include the INSPRA Distinguished Service in Leadership Award, the Marguerite F Fellowship, and helping her school earn the U.S. Department of Education National Blue Ribbon. It is an absolute pleasure to have her on the show today, and thank you so much for being with us, Debbie.
I am so honored. I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am to be with you, wonderful, amazing women. So, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, Debbie, so much of energized thinking is about critical thinking, curiosity, and learning. And I would love to just dive right in and tell our audience what excites you about learning.
Oh my goodness. Well, I've spent most of my career, I have 36 years in education, pretty much all at the early childhood, young elementary level. And when I think about student learning, the thing that just makes my heart soar is when I think about those children who are in the flow. And I think Ellen Keene uses that term, the flow, for when students are completely engaged. And I think we all know that, like that feeling of when you're passionate about something you're working on and it doesn't feel like work. And so you're in the flow, and it's watching those children who are completely absorbed by what they're doing, what they want to learn about, and that they are actually so engaged that they are listening and talking to the children around them, which we know, that comes with growth and time. But I feel like that's why I'm so passionate about play is I'm not seeing as many opportunities for children to get in there, kind of get dirty and try and figure out things with peers. So it embraces so much. It embraces social emotional learning, but it also builds critical thinking. It also helps create those file folders in children's minds for executive thinking and processing. And so when joyful learning is happening, um, it leaves an imprint on children's hearts. And I know this just from talking to former students. They never come back and say, "Thanks so much, Mrs. Klein, for that great worksheet you gave us." I've never heard that. Or, "Wow, you really gave a great lecture on history." But they do talk about those moments where we did inquiry-based learning, or they had to come up with a game to teach a concept to others. They remember those moments, and they always involve the interaction with others and solving problems. And so that's what excites me about learning.
It's amazing. Love it.
Yeah, that, that's amazing. Wow, I really love this idea of like incorporating and integrating play with the education. What an like it's amazing way to engage children, and I think it would really help adults also to learn in a way because when you learn with experience, it leaves an imprint in your mind, and it is everlasting. So that concept is so amazing. So tell us a bit about your, tell us a bit more about it. That what kind of like techniques do you use to integrate play in your education? Especially when you're teaching some boring concept like history or maybe some social studies or something like this. How you integrate play into that and make it more fun.
So you made me think of a couple of things. One of the things that you hit upon, and I passionately believe this as well. Adults need play. So as a leader, first, I've really believed that I needed to create a playful environment for my staff.
Mm.
And there's so many components to that, right? But if you have a playful environment, that builds safety. And that then allows people to be vulnerable, and that allows them to be willing to be more playful. And so I think, and Bryn, you hit on something really, really important. That would be my other, like when I talk about play, I don't always just talk about kids. I feel like if the adults are feeling playful, right, and passionate, and I've told them that, I'm like, if you show passion, you can sell a toothpick to a kid because they
Yeah.
they pick up on your energy, and so but they need to feel safe. And it's the same thing for our students, right? So by creating those safe environments where they're willing to take risks, um way before I started reading research on play, and I was, a young lady in classrooms teaching, and I've taught every grade in kindergarten through fifth. um we I always looked at with my teammates, how can we look at this curriculum that we are required to teach, right? Or I don't want to say we tie the hands of teachers because that's not right, but we give them what they need to teach. Um, it's when we tell them exactly how to teach it that I feel like we tie their hands a bit. But I would meet with my teammates that wasn't just my classroom teachers, but I'm talking about my reading specialist, my math specialist, my special ed teacher, because they all come at that, right, with a different lens. And putting all those lenses together helps me find within the curriculum, within math, within reading, within social studies, what big ideas fit together, and how can we create a thematic way of approaching this for students. It makes more sense for them, right? Otherwise, you have 60, 75 minutes of math. And then we're going to move, boom, now we're going to do an English language arts lesson and we're going to do grammar. Okay, now we're switching again. And for our students, I think most particularly our students who are multilingual, our students who might have, a cognitive or a behavior challenge, um, constantly moving from box to box can be really challenging. So when you sit together with all those specialists and you look at what your standards are and your curriculum is, and looking more holistically, how can we link these things together? I think that's the best way to create those playful environments. And I guess probably the easiest way to explain that would be just to share. I'll try and make it short. I know I talk too much, but when I think back to a time when I was teaching second grade, for example, and I happened to have an incredible team in my wing. So there were two second grade, two first grade, two kinder, and we all collaborated. And we knew that at different levels in social studies, we had to teach about whether you're teaching about yourself and your place in your world, or whether you were teaching about your community. All of that fits together, right, in a strand. So we ended up all opening a business in our classrooms. So kindergarten already was studying from seed to plant. They opened a farmer's market. The first graders, then they opened a grocery store because they could take things from the farmer's market, right? And put those in their
Wow.
grocery store. And then I opened a restaurant. So then I had to go to the restaurant, or excuse me, to the grocery store
Yeah.
to get supplies for my restaurant. And then that all required money. So we walked across the hall to the bank, and that teacher had opened a bank. And so all of those pieces, though, they also had to design. Like we had to do addition and subtraction. Well, what a perfect way to do it. You have to add up from the menu how much your customer owes. Uh, for writing,
Wow.
and they need authentic writing. Kids will need a purpose for writing. If you just say we're going to respond to literature all the time, I think we're killing writing for kids. So a more authentic way of doing that would be saying, we're going to write menus, we're going to write invitations, we're going to write signs for our restaurant. So I think for me, that's hopefully a simplified way of saying that's how I feel like we can create a more playful environment, more meaningful, and more authentic opportunities for our students.
Deborah, I absolutely love everything about what you're talking about. You know, when we first started, even before we were recording, I was thinking about this is all about energized thinking with the education, with the innovation, and what you just spoke about the true application to life. So education within the classroom, but being able, like you said, I love how you mentioned purpose, like purpose behind why you do certain assignments. And I love when you were speaking about earlier in the conversation how when students return to you that they don't necessarily say, you know, hey Debbie, thank you so much for that particular worksheet, because that is the truth, right? They remember experiences. And so I love what you were just saying. And it honestly, it started already like going into that next question of authentic learning opportunities. But do you, like, as you were in the education system, are you seeing a move towards this more experiential type learning and application to real world, even at these younger grades? Or do you think it's like more of a slower process to actually uptake? Like, what is the thought process on that right now, what you're seeing?
Well, and I want to be very, transparent and honest. My world is small. I'm in, one state getting into buildings and, basically within my county. So my vision is somewhat small. However, when you look at books by Jonathan Haidt and such, I think the message of, moving away from isolated tasks for kids, I do believe it's moving away from that. um, what I'm seeing in the buildings that I'm in now, I do see still a lot of this like blocked scheduling. And when I talk to teachers about, where's the play happening? First of all, I don't know that our teachers and definitely not our administrators understand what I mean by that. I think they think I'm talking about recess all day, a free for all in the classroom, rather than really targeted literacy skills happening within a playful environment. And so I think teachers are craving it, to be honest with you. When I go in and model for teachers, it's almost like, they you just brought your you just brought your trash in and did a lesson with kids. Like I bring my recyclables in and we start building things that fit with the science curriculum, but they never thought to just do that, that this is what the text says, this is what my district says I need to do, and here's a video to highlight it, rather than let's get rid of the video and let's do it. So I'm passionate about spreading this message. I work very closely with Dr. Lindsay Meeker. She is a professor out at Fresno State in California, and this is her passion as well. She does a lot with yoga and mindfulness. We know that that lowers the cortisol levels for students, and so my hope and the work that I'm starting to do with her is really digging into, and does play do that as well, especially for our kids that come to school with those ACEs, which are all the things that could cause trauma for a child when they come in with those, I don't want to say strikes against them, but um, sitting them listening or reading a book that's not at their level, that's not at their interest, and they've just come from a home where maybe they haven't been fed or they've been screamed at or whatever. um, Play could, my theory is,
Yeah.
play could really address those needs as well. And so that's kind of where our research is hopefully taking us. Like, how can we use play to help address those issues? And then how my vantage point is, how can administrators, how can I help leaders sustain that? Because a principal has so much on their plate, and there's people breathing down their backs all the time, whether it's, a parent who's, we're talking about the most precious part of their life. And so they're, you know, very elevated, or whether we're talking about, a board of education, which wants to know why are these scores looking like this. And so then for a principal to go, oh, okay, I'm going to take a risk away from what I've been told we need to do, and I'm going to give my teachers permission to do some gamified learning or some free play during their day, in their day that's already packed full is really challenging for them. And so that's where I've been trying hopefully to help them look at how can we look at this more holistically and find those places where play naturally could happen.
You're doing absolutely incredible work. And I love how you mentioned like the stress almost that could happen with like the test taking or the, reading a book when you don't know what's actually happening outside as far as the environment that they're living in, but leaning in towards that play. So absolutely the research that you're doing is really going to be, I think, as we move forward, really crucial to the environment for children to enjoy learning and to experience that experiential learning that could actually help them apply in life. So I love everything about this, Debbie.
I hope, I do know, like in, again, my narrow world, but I do know there are a couple of states looking at this and in their early childhood literacy plans. For example, I live in Illinois, and Illinois, within the early literacy plan, play is written into the plan. So administrators are going to have to look at this and figure it out. So that's exciting to me that it's, becoming a mandate. Then that makes my job easier to, if you have to do it, now let's figure out a fun way to do it. So I think there are states moving that way. I'm just not sure how global that is.
That's incredible. I love this, Debbie, and I love how you mentioned like this with play and feeling safe. And I think that's so much about all of us. If we talk about kids and adults all have their inner child, and I sometimes will think about that with my own inner child of how can I bring that out? How can I bring my inner child out when I'm with my kids or when I'm with other kids? And I think it puts it in a different perspective of play, where adults kind of underestimate its power, despite the fact that we are seeing this all of these studies are saying, yes, this is what we need to be doing for neuroscience, neuroplasticity. The brain responds to this. We don't stop. The brain does not stop growing. And I think for the longest time, we thought it stopped. And now we know, now the evidence is astoundingly pointing to this is a this we keep growing, and play is so much of an answer to help with rigidity with so many things. And I almost, when you said like teachers are craving this, it's almost like the teachers need to feel safe in a way too. Everyone needs to feel safe in a way. And it makes me think like with my experience as a healthcare provider, we would give education and all, but I remember as a patient, I say this all the time because it was so profound, where I had an experience where the provider was telling me this huge long thing, and all I was so stressed, I was not feeling safe at all I remember was his shoes. That's all I remember. And I remember looking at his shoelaces, and I needed my husband there to hear what he was saying. I, to this day, do not know what he said. And, but I do remember around that same time, someone, a nurse practitioner, hugging me, and how that is also something I remember. And so this sense of safety, just really that imprint that you said earlier is so important, so the foundation. And that kind of brings me to the next question I have of why is a sense of trust and safety important for building communities of care? I know you talked about that, and you talked about how you're in one state, one county, but the ripples that you're creating can create waves. And why is this important for us to keep pushing this message forward, and for states like Illinois and other states to keep doing this?
I think when I look at, you know, a lot of this is born out of your own need. And so I remember being a brand new principal, and we'll say maybe they were less than thrilled to have me as their new principal. We'll just say that it was a big risk for them. And I remember thinking, major imposter syndrome, major, like, I don't belong here. I don't know what I'm doing. And I somehow needed to create a space where I could actually walk in the door each day and not cry. So,
Yeah.
um, and I thought about that a lot. as my staff would change and grow, like, what am I doing that's making them feel safe and welcome and connected? Because then I realized nobody's going to take a risk. We're just going to like, this is a great school. It has a great reputation. We have great test scores, and we're going to just keep the status quo.
Yeah.
Or how am I going to make it better? And so I did things that I personally like were totally out of my comfort zone. And I knew I was taking them out of their comfort zone, but in a playful way that eventually you got to silliness. And so, like, here are some dumb examples. I would give a bag. I divide people into teams. They got a grocery bag, and inside the grocery bag might be a stapler, a plastic bag, some rickrack, glue, and some paper. And I said, okay, it's Project Runway, and you and your team have 20 minutes to design spirit wear for our school. And then we had a runway show. And but the silliness that came out of that and the really creative, innovative ideas that came out of this, you know, half-hour staff meeting linger, and people still talk about that. We spent a lot of time on Enneagram work, whatever personality, assessment you want to use or whatever. There's all sorts of things out there. I personally liked the Enneagram because it talks about what motivates you and moves you forward. And of course, some staff were reluctant to dive into that with me, right? Because I'm not a psychologist. I don't claim to be. I just claim to be somebody that wants to learn how to communicate better with all of you. And so I used myself all the time as, you know what, I'm a 2, I'm a 9 on the Enneagram. That means I'm very sensitive and I'm a mediator. So if you're upset about something, do not come to me and yell at me. I will shut down and cry and you won't get your way. If you want something, come to me with, love and grace and whatever. And which also led to a quick story about just setting the tone for work. I happened to have a staff member whose husband, I got news during the day that her spouse had been arrested for something pretty awful and serious. And I wanted the staff to come together. And, you have to really approach that delicately. What do I share? What do I not share? And basically, I just decided I brought everybody together and I said, this is what's happened to one of our staff members. Something awful's happened to one of our staff members. And and people are nosy and they're going to want to ask you questions, like the news was involved and such. And I said, and this is what I believe. We are this story is not about our colleague. This story is about somebody she loves, but it's not about our colleague. And so we are assuming goodness and we are giving grace. And that's all we're doing. We are going to walk alongside that person. And I think that mantra, that's my mantra. And that's where it came from. It came out of this moment in time where somebody was really suffering. And that mantra has lived on despite the fact that I've retired from that building. That mantra is still being used in that building. And I do think that helped, always going back to um, that place of trust, because we are being watched, right? We are being watched critically and constantly. I think parents, like I said, we're talking about the most precious part of their lives. So if we don't let them in, if we don't bring them into the building, if we don't get on the phone, you know, we don't, sometimes you just have to email, right? If it's a quick question, sometimes you just have to email. But when you're talking specifically about a child, you got to pick up the phone. You got to say, can you come in for coffee so we can talk about this? It's those types of things that I think build that community of trust and care and safety. And it takes time and it's really hard. Like I said, I was a principal for 16 years. It's really hard. But if you don't take care of that first, the other stuff, forget it. The deadlines, all of that mean nothing if you haven't taken care of your community and created that community of care. So it's kind of lots of layers, but it's all about connection, right? It's all about relationships, which we all know are critical.
Absolutely.
Wow, I love that. Like each and everything you said, it's like so precious, and you are such an innovative and creative person that you bring the right thing to build the community, to engage everyone, like be it adults or be it kids. Like I love the idea of creating that fun or play things in the curriculum, like when they can relate, not like, because like yesterday my actually my child, like Zoe, gave the talk about it, and he actually, we usually have a lot of arguments, like me and Zoraib had about this. And what he doesn't like about the school is one thing, he, that he's been given the information about something which he cannot relate. That's why he has to like understand that the tuning fork will just create the ripple, or why he would just think about this some kind of mathematical equation, and why does he want to know that this gravity is doing this or whatever. He needs to learn some kind of mathematical equation to solve this problem, which he, when he cannot relate to his real life. So but your task is like when you are doing these kind of play things, when they can actually learn what is in the curriculum, but at the same time they can relate it to the real world. That and that is, I mean, I really like that you are actually building them or developing their skills which are needed in their practical life. So whenever, like when they will go to college or something, they will know how to use those skills instead of like memorizing those equations to solve certain like problem to answer the question, which they
Yes.
will forget in the second grade, or like in the when they move into the other grade. So I love that idea. But I would just ask that I even you also mentioned that when you actually moved to the position, you were having the imposter syndrome as well. Because when you are creative, when you are building, or when you are bringing something new, you get the opposition because people don't like to take risks. They want to follow the same thing. So, what I would just say, what obstacle you faced when you are introducing these innovative or creative ways into your curriculum or into your system?
It depends on which um, group I'm getting pushback from. I have yet to have gotten any pushback from a parent yet.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
One parent has ever come to me and said, "You're dumbing down the learning."
Mm-hmm.
Um, the pushback I've gotten, I would say, is more um, from educators, and I think it's the
Yeah.
data that they need proof, and I think that's the hard part, right? How do you measure
Yeah.
children's success in play? And so I think it's really like the longitudinal data that they're going to need. They're going to need to see, okay, in kindergarten, I might not have the highest test scores. I may not. Just because I believe in play and I believe it makes all the difference in the world, I I might not have every kid that knows all of their letter sounds and can read 60 words.
Mhm.
But my question is when you look at those kids that had that play in kinder and first, and then playful environments in second and third and fourth, I want to know, sixth grade teachers, when you're doing these assigned independent projects, how are the kids collaborating? Are they thinking deeply? Are they having meaningful conversations? Because I'm going to bet my life on the fact that they are. Because what what I saw in my 36 years of education was a huge change when that iPhone was introduced. And even when DVD players, this is going to sound silly, but when DVD players got put in vehicles, and parents would pull up to my neighborhood school where they only lived 2 or 3 blocks away, picking up their child. The child got in the car seat and the TV was on, or they were handed an iPad rather than let's talk about your day. Hey, there's the word stop. Can you find another
Yeah.
place where you see the word stop? Just those things like we had to do because I'm old and I had to keep the kids entertained and quiet in the car, but it built conversation. I don't think that happens like it used to. So it starts at home. And then I think, again, our teachers have so much um, curriculum and so much pressure on them that I think it's hard for them to release control. Like the children should be part of this decision making. I'm not saying every child gets to do whatever project they want to do. That's not possible in a public school setting with, 25 to 30 kids. But as a group, we could be talking about, hey, we have to learn about um, World War II. And what we have to decide is like how that happened and how we can prevent that from happening again. So, what components would each of you like to take on that research about this topic? And then how can we teach it? We're going to invite the principal and parents in to learn about our research. And so, how can we present that? Should we write a play? Should we write a story? How about we each write a poem? What do you think? And bringing them into tapping into their different multiple intelligences, so that your bodily kinesthetic kid could maybe demonstrate a dance and a song that was popular during that time period, while your literature-based student might want to write a summary about what was going on at a particular time period. I know that was a very broad topic, but I think we need to invite the kids into that, and we also need to delegate, because when you're an elementary school teacher, chances are you're expected to be an expert in every subject area. We don't do a lot of compartmentalizing. Like in high school, you can be an expert in just US history. Elementary school, you need to like understand the science of reading and really need to be good at that. And you really need to understand mathematical instruction and developmental milestones. So we have to allow those teachers to delegate too, bring in, if my passion is the arts, okay, um, how can I as an art teacher join into your theme of World War II? Maybe we look at what some of the popular artists were at that time, and I can at least add a component to what you're studying, so that at some point in that study, every kid has been sparked. We can't spark for every minute of every day. I get that. But if we can find moments for them to get that flow, that engagement, then when you put all the pieces back together and you each have kids that are experts in something they were passionate about, now you've got a whole study to share with families and a purpose for sharing them.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an amazing way to involve them. And as you say, that everyone has a different passion or different, I would say, intelligence, because not everyone has the same intelligence. Some may have some intelligence for, let's say, body movement, so they can express their feelings, their emotions, their learning through body movement. Some may have emotional intelligence, so they can actually express this in a different way. Or as you said, maybe art or dance or anything that can link to this. And it is such a brilliant way to actually engage all touch points of their like mind. It's not some just one way of like giving them lecture and understanding, or just giving them the theoretical information. You actually bringing the kids from all the touch points of their minds and their body and their like brain. This is amazing. I love what you're doing.
So, Debbie, you have certainly touched upon it when it comes to screens. But, mentioning Jonathan Haidt and his work, the phone based childhood versus the play based childhood, now entering into the classroom, really, we wanted to understand more about your thought process when it comes to screens and then education and learning. And so I'm just going to open up that question, pretty broad, pretty general, but just what your thoughts are on screens.
They certainly have a purpose, right? Technology has a purpose. I mean, I use it all the time. However, it's a tool. And I think that's the message we need to keep telling our families and our teachers, that the instruction doesn't need to come from the computer. The instruction comes from the experiences you provide in the classroom. And this is a tool that we might use to make that experience more meaningful. So I'll go back to the World War II, the very poor World War II example that I gave. But how are we going to get this information, kids? You decided you wanted to take the US perspective during World War II. Okay, how do we get that? Okay, we're going to go to the library, but yeah, we're going to have to use technology, right? And then that becomes the catalyst for teaching, um, what are what do I want to say? What are reliable sources? Because
Sure.
that's another piece that's missing. And I think as adults we struggle with that. I mean, how many adults do you talk to that are like, well, they say on Facebook, blah blah blah. So it's an opportunity for getting our children to have some tech literacy as well. So in those moments, I think they're super valuable. What breaks my heart is when I see like break time in a classroom, and the break time is everybody can hop on their computer and play a game. Could they play it like a different kind of game, like a board game, or build with blocks instead? Because that is going to build them more as a person
Mm-hmm.
than this game. Now, I'm a mom. I might be an old mom, but I sure as heck remember what it's like when you've worked all day and you come home and you also have to put dinner on the table and somebody's crying. Okay, that might be the time. Guess what? You can practice your maths on that game on the computer, but it's limited while mom's making dinner. I just think, um, the pendulum in education, and I suppose it's probably the same in healthcare, right? It swings back and forth. And hopefully, with each swing, we get smarter and a little better. But right now, I feel like the pendulum has swung back to more of a scripted type curriculum. I feel like there's more isolation with kids because of technology. And so I'd like to swing it back towards the middle where we use technology as a tool. It's a great tool. Our kids need to be literate. That is their lives, right? Like we need coding clubs. We need them to understand all of those things. But if I have students in the classroom spending their day on the computer, then why are they coming to school?
Mm-hmm.
So true.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fantastic message, I think, with utilizing technology as a tool versus, I think, even outside of the classroom, like just if you go to a restaurant and you see a family where everybody is connected to some form of electronic devices, whether it's a phone, an iPad, um, I mean, right? We could all like relate to it. And I think especially for children during those developmental years where social skills that are developing are so critical, are so important. I look back in childhood and I could remember, playing on the cul-de-sac and with two other boys. And yes, sometimes arguments or how we should do something, came to play. But I think that was so important that you are able to work through conflict, just in that example, but let alone back in the classroom, how important it is to utilize it as a tool and not something just to hold on to perhaps the whole day, because that can lead into other maybe challenges that arise. So thank you so much for that, Debbie.
Now you are so, I mean, oh my gosh, you are so right. When I would call a parent because their child, did something kind of naughty,
Yeah.
and so I'd call, right? And oftentimes parents would be, so mortified. I'm like, isn't it great that they made that mistake here in second grade instead of make that same mistake in seventh grade where they might like get suspended or something? I'm like, those like let's embrace the mistakes. We don't want those to happen. If it keeps happening, that's a problem. But like, yay, your kid made a mistake, apologized for it. We're moving on, and I just think we need to embrace those, just what you're saying. Kids need to have arguments on the playground because
Yes.
we don't know how to have those conversations now as adults. These crucial, critical conversations where we can agree to disagree, but at least I'm going to seek to understand. So I think it's awesome when we have arguments on the playground that they not physical ones, but where they have to figure it out.
Debbie, I think that's such an important point, and I feel like also, as a parent that has grade school age kids now, I feel like it also, it's that self-awareness as well as self-grace, where I think sometimes I can be guilty of this too, where I try a variety of ways of how can I not be on my phone as much, and how can I kind of not have that addiction, where I love how you say this power tool, because it is helpful for certain tasks, but when you take a power tool and you take it everywhere, then it's going to be damaging. Like if I'm going to take a power tool and like cut a little flower bush, that's not necessary, but it's helpful for other things. So all that to say, I will say to myself in my head, like, oh, look at me. I'm not on my phone with my kids right now. But then, I'm going to be vulnerable as mom, because I don't know. I feel like sometimes like we don't say these things, I guess, but where I'll be like, oh, I'm not on my phone right now, but I see that mom is on her phone, and I kind of am like, oh, good. I'm rocking it. And then a second later, I get on my phone, but then I think in my head like, oh well, I had to do this. Like I had to check my email. I had to do this.
Yep.
And I think there is like, and Breen, you may know like the psychological thing of like if you show up late versus if someone else shows up late. Well, it was because of traffic or whatever. I'm giving myself, those excuses, but not other people. And I think it is also at the same time giving myself that grace of sometimes I do have to. So there is this balance, and I think there is this awareness of how do I become more aware and be okay with the fact that I'm making mistakes, like you're saying, but also learn from my mistakes. And I don't know if that was too much or too vulnerable. I feel
No,
like it's something that, like, I don't know, we don't talk about as much as
and I'm
parents.
so glad you do. I mean, as you're talking, Valerie, I'm like looking at the screen thinking, what a gift this is, right? Like
Hmm.
this is a gift of people coming together, not competing, right? It's not a I know everything because heaven knows I don't. And really building each other up. And I think you ladies modeling that and creating this forum, I think is so powerful because right, we carry a lot of shame with us. Why? I don't know, but I mean, feel badly and guilty for about everything. I'm always people are like you don't have to apologize. I apologize for everything. And it's that lens of that, by the way, that little slogan, give goodness and assume grace, is for me because I forget that. I do the same thing. I look and go, okay, self-validation. I did not do that. Where instead I should look at that person and go, gosh, maybe I hope they don't have a crisis going on that they had to run and get their phone. Do you know, like just that
Yep.
reframing? My husband is the best at that. Like somebody will cut us off and I'll be like, oh, and he's like, maybe they're rushing to the hospital. I'm like, oh, now I feel horrible. You're right. Maybe they have a terrible. So it's that I think what you're doing is starting to lay that foundation for us to be vulnerable and honest and like build each other up instead of compete. I think we just naturally do that because we all want to do what's right by our kids. And so I think I just appreciate you ladies for doing this. I think it's an incredible forum. And I'm excited to share it with my friends.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, I'm so glad that Valerie brought this point up that, we are ashamed of our vulnerability. I think that's how society has built us. like, that if you are not doing this, if you're not, if you're losing your marks, like kids are always said that, oh, you are a failure, you need to work hard, or this. I mean, instead of like trying to figure out that why is the thing that he's failing, or sometimes you need to just tell them that failing is not bad. If he's failing, that means he needs to learn, and he may be learning from this, and that's fine. Like I always tell my kids that, okay, that's fine if you are not getting like good grades. You don't need to like cry over that, why I'm not getting good grades. You just try to focus that if you get the concept well or not, and that's it. If that concept remain in their mind, if then it would work in the future life, instead of like hiding your vulnerability just by saying, oh no, I don't want to fail, or I don't want to do the mistake. And I think that's the point that you also brought, Debbie, that it's not the mistakes that that counts. It's just that like if we repeat the mistakes again, and then we need to figure out that how to solve that, and that's it. There's no shame of committing a mistake. I think all mistakes and failures are just the stepping stones towards achieving the success, and it's a part of the plan. And that's the message we need to convey to our kids also, that they don't need to fear the failure. They need to fear that what they are losing if just they're fearing the failure and committing the mistake. So I think I love that point that you are bringing to the education system as well about this.
Well, I don't know that anybody would agree with me on this, and I think it was more survival for me, but one of the best lessons I learned as a mom was all of my friends were constantly checking their kids' grades, because all that's accessible, constantly. Oh, they didn't turn in their homework. Oh, they didn't.
Yeah.
And I was going through a traumatic experience in my own personal life at that time and was just not able to do that too because of the shame. Like, oh my gosh, I have a one child who was didn't like to do homework. We'll leave it at that. And so there were always missing assignments, right? And I was feeling so much pressure about I'm a principal and my kid's not even doing the homework and blah, blah, that I decided I can't do this anymore. I can't look at that. And my child ended up failing. Now, this is a child that should have never in a million years failed any course,
Yeah.
but they chose not to do the homework, so they failed the course. Do you know that was the best thing? It was horrible. I think I bawled more than my child did,
Mhm.
but it was the best thing that ever happened because after that, my child went onto the honor roll, got a scholarship for college because all of a sudden,
Wow.
oh, going to summer school stinks. And I actually do have to. So, as painful as it is as a mom, because it is, right? You're like, I think we just have to sometimes step back. And the worst thing in the world, we never want our kids to feel pain, but sometimes it can be a really good thing for them. As much as it's so hard for us to watch.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We just need to embrace it, and that's like move on, and that's it. Like we need to give ourselves also grace to commit mistakes and not following and chasing and say it's not perfect. Same thing happened to me. I would just say last year when like my eldest was not performing well, and then I was like very stressed also. But then of course I just realized, no, I think let it be. Let it so, and that's that, as you said, that my eldest one learned the lesson. I also like get it. It's okay, that's fine. And I also learned the lesson that we do not have to give the stress to the kids. Neither we should take the stress. So I mean, these are the things I think we learn from the mistakes. So um, take the stress as a positive, I would just say.
Mhm. So true. And Debbie, I just wanted to say a couple things. I mean, number one, this conversation has been absolutely just so engaging and so just enlightening about the education system, what the future holds with innovation in the education system. And I had three takeaways from this conversation. I look at having purpose. purpose behind every assignment that goes out, being able to allow a child the understanding of why they're doing it and how it's going to apply in their life. I'm at more the collegiate level, and I still think that there's 100% value in that, is understanding that applicability of the chapter reading, how this actually relates to real life. And number two, utilizing technology as a tool. I love that. I think that's fantastic at any age for that matter, right? And Valerie brought up such a good point of not being like so addicted to the phone. I was listening to it's a podcast with Cal Newport, and he was talking about just that, of being able to like sometimes remove yourself and not be so, every message that comes in, you have to respond right away. And so I love that we just have this discussion. And then last but certainly not least, and Ambreen brought up, I mean, just such a good point about being able to make mistakes, not even just with kids, but even ourselves, because when you make a mistake, it demonstrates that we're trying, right? We're trying to develop ourselves to be a better version perhaps of ourselves than we were yesterday. I just want to close out and just say, like, thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You
So
guys
much.
have been
Amazing.
so wonderful, and I learned from you when I listened to you, and I thank you for letting me be a part of your world today. It was so, so wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really enlightening session. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your insights. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.